So I'm standing in a storage unit. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa. I live in Michigan. I've lived in Michigan my entire life. I'm 67 years old. And I have never once, not once, had a reason to go to Tulsa. And yet, here I am. July. If you've never been to Oklahoma in July, bitter laugh. Let me tell you, it's like standing inside a hairdryer. I'm sweating through my blouse. My feet hurt because I wore the wrong shoes. And I'm looking at 15 filing cabinets, a desk that looks like it belongs in a law office, and a safe the size of my refrigerator. My husband, Harold, drove a 2003 Honda Civic. He worked at the same factory for 34 years. He complained every month about the electric bill being too high. Last Christmas, he gave me a gift card to Kohl's. $50. He thought he was being generous. And I'm standing here, in this storage unit I didn't know existed until 3 weeks ago, realizing I didn't know my husband at all. Harold died 2 months ago. Heart attack. Right there in the driveway, still holding his coffee mug. 43 years of marriage. 3 kids, 7 grandkids, a house that's paid off, a modest retirement account. I thought that was our life. I thought that was everything. I was wrong. Let me back up a little. Actually, let me back up a lot. Because if I'm going to tell you this story, you need to understand who I thought Harold was, who I thought we were. I met Harold Patterson in 1979. I was 23 years old. Fresh out of community college. Had this degree in dental hygiene that I never ended up using. My parents wanted me to be a nurse. But I couldn't handle the blood. Dental work seemed like a good compromise. Less blood. Still helping people. Decent paycheck. I was working part-time at my uncle's hardware store in Grand Rapids. This little place on Division Avenue. Been there since the 1950s. My Uncle Frank, rest his soul, he knew everybody in town. Need a specific kind of screw, a particular paint color? Frank could find it. He was like Google before Google existed, except he smelled like sawdust and Old Spice. Harold came in one Tuesday afternoon. I remember it was Tuesday, because that was the day we got our shipments in, and I was up on a ladder, trying to organize the new drill bits. He walked in. I heard the bell over the door, looked down, and there he was. Now, Harold wasn't what you'd call handsome, not in the movie star way. He had this kind of round face, thinning hair even back then, these glasses that made him look like an accountant, which is funny, because he hated math, could never balance a checkbook. That was always my job. But he had this smile, this genuine, crinkly-eyed smile that made you feel like whatever you said was the most interesting thing he'd ever heard. "I need a socket wrench set," he said. "The good kind. My brother-in-law borrowed mine and never gave it back." I climbed down from that ladder. I was wearing this yellow sundress. My mother said it made me look like a canary. But it was hot in that store. No air conditioning back then, and I didn't care what I looked like. "What size are you looking for?" "I don't know. Whatever size fixes a 72 Dodge Dart." I don't know why that was funny, but it was. Something about the way he said it. Like the car was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Uncle Frank helped him find what he needed. But before Harold left, he turned back to me and said, "You have a nice laugh." That was it. That was the line that started 43 years of marriage. Not some smooth pickup line, not some grand romantic gesture, just, "You have a nice laugh." He came back the next day, said he needed sandpaper. Day after that, wood glue. By the fourth day, my Uncle Frank pulled me aside and said, "Linda, that boy doesn't need a single thing from this store. He's coming in here to see you." I said, "Don't be ridiculous," but I wore my good earrings the next day, just in case. Harold finally asked me to dinner on day number 7. He was so nervous. His voice cracked like a teenager's. We went to this little Italian place on Wealthy Street, the one that's a Thai restaurant now. I ordered spaghetti because I was too nervous to pronounce anything else on the menu. He ordered the same thing. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about his job at the factory, Patterson Manufacturing. They made car parts for the big 3 automakers. He told me about his parents, how his dad had died when he was 15, how his mom worked 2 jobs to keep the family together. He told me about his dream, maybe owning his own business someday, something small, something he could be proud of. I told him about my dental hygiene degree I wasn't using, about my dream of maybe going back to school, though I didn't know what for, about my cat, Whiskers, who had knocked over a lamp that morning, and I was still finding glass in the carpet. He walked me to my car after dinner, a 1975 Chevy Nova. My father said it was a death trap, but I loved it anyway. Harold stood there under the streetlight, hands in his pockets. I had a really nice time. "Can I see you again?" I said yes. I said yes to every date after that. The movie at the old Woodland Theater, the picnic at the park, the weekend drive up to Mackinac Island, where he bought me a little box of fudge and told me he loved me for the first time. Harold proposed on Christmas Eve, 1980. We were at my parents' house. He'd asked my father for permission earlier that day, which I thought was old-fashioned even then. He got down on one knee, in front of the Christmas tree, in front of my whole family, opened this little velvet box, with a ring that must have cost him 3 months' salary. It wasn't a big diamond, 1/4 carat maybe, but it sparkled in the Christmas lights, and Harold's hands were shaking, and my mother was already crying. I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married in June of 1981, small ceremony at St. Mary's, reception in the church basement. My dress cost $200. My mother thought that was too expensive. Harold wore a rented tux that was a little too big in the shoulders. Our wedding cake was from a grocery store bakery. My cousin played guitar for our first dance. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't expensive. But when I looked at Harold across that church basement, surrounded by our families and friends, I thought, this is it. This is my person. This is my life. I had no idea. The first 10 years of our marriage were good, really good. We bought a little house in Wyoming, the Michigan one, not the state. 3-bedroom ranch with a yard just big enough for a swing set. Harold commuted to the factory every day, left at 6:30 in the morning, home by 5:30. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental office, which at least used some of my training. Our first son, Kevin, was born in 1983. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, full head of dark hair, just like his daddy. I remember Harold holding him for the first time, tears streaming down his face. "I'm going to give you everything. Everything I never had." That was Harold, always wanting to provide, always worried that it wasn't enough. Our daughter Susan came 2 years later, then our youngest Michael in 1988. 3 kids in 5 years. My mother said I was crazy. Maybe I was. Those early years were chaos. Diapers and bottles and crying at 3 a.m. Harold and I were so tired. I don't know how we survived, but we had this routine. Every Sunday, no matter what, family dinner together. I'd make a roast, or spaghetti, or sometimes just frozen pizza if it had been a really hard week. But we'd all sit down at the table, no TV, no distractions, and we'd talk about our weeks. Kevin would tell us about Little League practice. Susan would complain about whatever book she was being forced to read for school. Michael, who was always the quiet one, would mostly just listen, and occasionally say something so profound it would stop the whole conversation. Harold would tell us about work, the same stories mostly, about the same people. Jim from shipping who was always late, Barbara in accounting who brought in homemade cookies every Friday, the machines that kept breaking down, the boss who kept putting off repairs. It wasn't exciting, but it was ours. We had our struggles. Of course we did. The recession in the early 90s hit the factory hard. Harold got laid off for 6 months. 6 months. 6 months of him sitting in the living room, watching the news, sending out resumes that never got answered. 6 months of me picking up extra shifts at the dental office, trying not to let the kids see how scared we were. He eventually got his job back, but something changed in him after that. He became more cautious, more worried about money. We'd go to the grocery store and he'd compare prices on everything, even if the difference was just a few cents. He'd drive across town to save $10 on a car repair. He stopped buying himself new clothes unless they were on sale. I thought it was because of the layoff, the fear of it happening again. I understood. I didn't love it, but I understood. The kids grew up. Kevin went to college on a partial baseball scholarship, dropped out after 2 years, ended up in real estate. He's done pretty well for himself, actually. Nice house in Grand Rapids, nice car. Susan became a nurse, the thing my parents always wanted me to be. She lives in Ohio now, near her husband's family. Michael, the quiet one, surprised us all by becoming a salesman. Turns out all that listening taught him how to read people. He sells medical equipment now, travels all over the country. They all got married, grandkids started coming. And through all of it, Harold and I just existed together. Is that the right word? We weren't unhappy. We weren't fighting. We had our routines, our Sunday dinners, our annual trip to Florida every January because Harold said Michigan winters would kill us. But somewhere along the way, we stopped really talking. Or maybe we never really did. Maybe I just didn't notice until now. Harold retired in 2018, 34 years at that factory. And they gave him a watch and a cake. I remember thinking, is that it? Is that all you get for 34 years? He seemed okay with it. He'd gotten into woodworking, had a whole setup in the garage. He'd spend hours out there, making birdhouses, cutting boards, little jewelry boxes for the granddaughters. He said it relaxed him. I thought we were happy. I thought we had everything figured out. And then Harold had his heart attack. April 15th, 2024, tax day, which is ironic considering what I found out later. He was walking to the car, going to buy more sandpaper or something, coffee mug in his hand, and he just collapsed. I was watching from the kitchen window, saw him fall, ran outside, called 911, held his hand while we waited for the ambulance. He looked up at me. His eyes were scared. He tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. He died in the ambulance, massive heart attack. The paramedic said he probably didn't suffer. That's what they always say, isn't it, whether it's true or not? And just like that, 43 years was over. The man I'd eaten dinner with every night, slept next to every night, raised 3 children with, gone, just like that. I didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. Before I get into what happened after Harold died, I need to tell you about my kids, about my family, because that's where this whole thing gets complicated. Let me start with Kevin, my oldest. Kevin was always the golden boy, good at sports, popular in school, the kind of kid that teachers and other parents pointed to and said, "See, that's what a good kid looks like. He could charm anyone, get away with anything." Even as a little boy, he'd bat those big brown eyes at me, and I'd forgive whatever he'd done. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I let him off the hook too many times. But he was my first baby, my miracle after 2 years of trying. I couldn't help but adore him. Kevin met Megan in 2009. He was showing her a house, this little starter home in East Grand Rapids. And apparently, She decided she wanted the realtor more than the house. They went on a date that night, married the next year. Megan is... Well, let me try to be fair here. Megan is 48 years old, which means she's 15 years younger than Kevin. She's thin, always dieting, always talking about some new cleanse or detox or whatever. She has blonde hair that I'm pretty sure isn't natural, although I've never asked. She dresses well, designer things. Or at least they look designer to me. When Kevin first brought her home, I thought she was nice. A little quiet, maybe. A little hard to read. But Kevin was happy. Happier than I'd ever seen him. So what did it matter what I thought? The first Thanksgiving she spent with us, she brought this elaborate sweet potato casserole from some recipe she'd found online. Marshmallows, pecans, something called brown sugar bourbon glaze. It was actually delicious, but the way she presented it, with this little speech about the artisanal ingredients and the preparation time, it felt like, I don't know, like she was trying to show us up. My mother, rest her soul, made a simple green bean casserole every year. Nothing fancy, and Megan looked at it like it was roadkill. How traditional, she said. My mother didn't like her after that. Neither did my sister Patricia. But Patricia doesn't like anyone, so that wasn't saying much. Over the years, I've tried to have a relationship with Megan. I really have. I invite her to things. I remember her birthday. I compliment her house, her clothes, her cooking. But there's always this distance, this wall between us that I can't seem to get through. After Harold died, Megan was the one who suggested she help with the finances. "You've got so much to deal with right now," she said, about a week after the funeral. "Kevin and we can handle the banking stuff. The bills, the insurance claims. You shouldn't have to worry about any of that." I was so grateful, I really was. Harold had always handled the money. I didn't even know all our account numbers. Megan said she'd get everything organized, set up a system, make it easy for me to understand. She asked me to sign some documents. Power of attorney, she said, just so she could talk to the banks on my behalf, just to make things easier. I signed them, because she was family, because I trusted her. Stupid, so stupid. So, the first thing that felt really off happened about 6 weeks after Harold's funeral. I was trying to pay the electric bill, something I'd never done before. In 43 years of marriage, Harold always handled the bills, always paid them right on time, kept everything organized in his little filing cabinet in the den. I'd been putting it off, honestly. Every time I walked into that den, I could smell him, that old Spice aftershave he'd worn since I met him. I'd sit in his chair and cry, sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer. But the electric company doesn't care that your husband died. They still want their money. So I went into the den, opened the filing cabinet, started looking for our bank information. And the first thing I noticed, the files were a mess. Now, Harold was an organized person, obsessively organized. Everything had a place, everything was labeled, filed alphabetically and chronologically. He'd yell at me if I put the ketchup in the wrong spot in the refrigerator. But this filing cabinet looked like someone had gone through it in a hurry. Files were out of order, some were missing entirely, based on the labeled tabs that had nothing behind them. The folder marked Bank Statements 2024, empty. I figured Megan must have taken them. She was handling the finances now, right? Made sense. I called her to ask. "Oh yeah," she said. "I needed those for the accountant. Tax stuff, you know. Boring but necessary." "The accountant?" "Kevin found someone. A guy who specializes in estates. He's handling everything." I didn't know we needed an estate accountant. Well, with the life insurance payout and the house and everything, it's complicated. Don't worry about it, Linda. We've got it handled. I didn't like the way she said that. We've got it handled. Like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with adult things. But I let it go. I was too tired to argue. The second thing happened at the grocery store. About a week later, I was at Meijer, our local grocery chain. Let me set the scene for you, because the details matter. It was a Thursday afternoon. For 43 years, Harold and I had gone to the grocery store together every Thursday evening. He'd push the cart, I'd read off the list, and we'd argue about whether we really needed the name brand peanut butter, or if the store brand was fine. He always won, store brand. But I was out of milk and bread, and I couldn't keep living off crackers and the sympathy casseroles people had brought after the funeral. So I forced myself to go. Put on real clothes instead of the sweatpants I'd been living in. Did my makeup for the first time in weeks. Drove to Meijer like a normal person doing normal things. I got my groceries, just the basics, milk, bread, eggs, some deli meat, a few frozen dinners, came to about $87, which seemed like a lot for so little. But prices have gotten crazy lately. I got in line, lane 7, self-checkout, because I wasn't in the mood to make small talk with a cashier, scanned everything, hit pay, put in my debit card, declined. I figured I'd done something wrong. Put the card in the wrong way or something. Tried again, declined. The machine was making this beeping sound. I could feel the people behind me getting annoyed. There was this teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17, making this sighing noise like I was personally ruining his day. "Do you have another form of payment?" the attendant asked. There must be a mistake. "This is my regular account. Sometimes the machines glitch. Do you have cash or a credit card?" I did not have cash. Harold always said we didn't need to carry cash anymore. Everything was digital, and my credit card was at home because Harold said we shouldn't use credit cards unless it was an emergency. Can I leave the groceries and come back?" She shrugged. "Sure." I walked out of that store with nothing, left $87 worth of groceries sitting in the self-checkout lane. The teenage boy behind me was probably thrilled. I sat in my car for probably half an hour trying to figure out what happened. Finally called the bank's customer service number. Spent 20 minutes on hold, listening to smooth jazz and a robot voice telling me my call was important. Finally got a real person, a man named Derek, who sounded like he was 12 years old. "Ma'am," he said, after I explained the situation, "I'm showing a current balance of $847 in this account. That's not right. There should be at least $15,000, maybe more. We had the life insurance deposited last month. I'm showing $847, ma'am. Would you like me to read off the recent transactions?" I said yes, and that's when the bottom started to fall out. He read off a list of withdrawals. $2,000 here, $3,500 there, $1,800 somewhere else. All in the past month. All from ATMs I didn't recognize. "Ma'am, these withdrawals were made with your debit card. Do you have your card with you?" I looked in my wallet. The card was there. "Yes, I have it." "Then someone else must have access to your account. Do you share this account with anyone?" I thought about it. Harold was dead. The kids weren't on our accounts, but Megan. Megan had asked for all those account numbers. Megan had the power of attorney. "I need to call you back," I said. I sat in that parking lot for another hour, trying to make sense of it. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Megan had needed money for the estate accountant and forgot to tell me. Maybe she was paying bills I didn't know about. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. I decided to ask her directly. That night, I called Kevin's house. Megan answered. "Linda, how are you doing?" "We were just talking about you. Kevin wants to take you to dinner this weekend if you're free." I asked about the bank account, about the withdrawals, about where the money went. There was a long pause. "Oh, that," she finally said. "Yeah, there were some unexpected expenses with the estate. The accountant's fees, some back taxes Harold apparently owed, a few other things. I was going to talk to you about it, but you've been so stressed. I didn't want to worry you. Back taxes? Harold owed back taxes? It's all being handled, Linda. Please don't worry about it. The accountant says everything should be sorted out in a few weeks. Can I talk to this accountant?" Another pause. Longer this time. "He's not really available right now. Very busy, but I can have him call you if you want." "Yes, I want." "Okay. I'll pass along the message. Oh, and Linda, don't go talking to the bank yourself anymore. You might mess up the account access. Let me handle it." She hung up before I could respond. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, in the dark, in the house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet, and I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Megan was family. She wouldn't steal from me. Kevin wouldn't let her. This was all a misunderstanding. But something in my gut said otherwise. Over the next few weeks, I started paying more attention. At first it was little things. Megan would come over to check on me, which she'd never done before Harold died. She'd make tea, chat about the grandkids, ask if I needed anything, but she'd also wander around the house, opening drawers, looking at things. When I asked what she was looking for, she'd say, "Oh, nothing, just admiring your things." One time, I caught her in Harold's den, in his filing cabinet. She jumped when I walked in. "Just looking for that tax document you mentioned," she said. "The one about the property taxes." I hadn't mentioned any tax document. "Megan, I didn't mention any tax document." She didn't miss a beat. "Oh, I must be thinking of something," Kevin said. "You know how these things get mixed up. Anyway, I should get going. Lots to do today." She kissed my cheek on the way out. Her lipstick left a mark, that coral color she always wore. I wiped it off after she left. My neighbor Dorothy noticed something was off too. Dorothy is 74 years old, a retired librarian, sharp as a tack despite what people think about old ladies. She's lived next door to us for 25 years. She knew Harold. She knew our family. She knew when things weren't right. "Linda," she said one afternoon, over coffee on my back porch, "that daughter-in-law of yours has been over here a lot lately. She's helping with the estate." Is that what she's calling it? What do you mean?" Dorothy stirred her coffee, choosing her words carefully. "My nephew is a financial advisor. He says there's a lot of elder fraud going on these days, people taking advantage of older folks after their spouse dies." "Megan is family, Dorothy. She wouldn't." "Family is sometimes the worst, honey. They know where all the money is." I didn't want to hear it. I thanked her for the coffee and went inside. But that night, I did something I'd never done before. I went online and looked up power of attorney fraud. What I found made my stomach turn. Stories, hundreds of stories, people who'd signed over power of attorney to family members, only to have their bank accounts drained, their homes sold out from under them, their life savings stolen, adult children stealing from their elderly parents, daughters-in-law, just like mine, who'd gotten access through trust, and then taken everything. I told myself it couldn't happen to me. My kids loved me. Megan might be cold, but she wasn't a thief, right? The next time Megan came over, I watched her more carefully. The way she looked at things, the way she asked questions. "Linda, did Harold have any insurance policies I don't know about? Something through work, maybe?" "Not that I know of." "What about investments? Stocks, bonds, anything like that?" "Harold didn't believe in the stock market. Said it was gambling." She made a note on her phone. "And the safety deposit box. Have you been able to find the key?" I froze. "What safety deposit box?" "Oh, there's one at Chase. Didn't Harold tell you? His name's on the account. I've been trying to get access, but the bank won't let me without the key or a court order. Harold had a safety deposit box. In 43 years of marriage, he'd never mentioned a safety deposit box. I didn't know about that. Megan's face did something complicated, like she was trying to look sympathetic, but couldn't quite manage it. Well, if you find the key, let me know. Could be important estate documents in there. After she left, I tore the house apart looking for that key. Not because I wanted to help Megan access whatever was in there, but because I wanted to know what my husband had been hiding. I found it in the garage, in Harold's woodworking area, hidden in a jar of screws that looked like every other jar of screws. A small brass key, with a number on it. 247. I didn't tell Megan. Then there was Thanksgiving. A few weeks later, we had family dinner at Kevin and Megan's house that year, which was already unusual. We'd always done Thanksgiving at my house. Always. Since the kids were little. But Megan said she wanted to give me a break. After everything I'd been through, I made a sweet potato casserole to bring, the same one my mother used to make, with marshmallows on top, nothing fancy, and my chocolate pie, which Harold always said was the best part of any holiday. When I got there, Megan took the casserole out of my hands and put it in the kitchen. I didn't see it again until after dinner, and then only half of it was left. Where did the rest of the casserole go? Oh, Carter didn't like it. He scraped his portion into the trash. My grandson had thrown away my mother's sweet potato casserole, the recipe I'd made every year for 60 years. Into the trash. He could have just said he didn't want any. Megan shrugged. You know how teenagers are. But that wasn't even the worst part of that Thanksgiving. The worst part was the conversation I overheard. I'd gone to use the bathroom upstairs, their master bathroom, because the downstairs one was occupied. On my way back, I passed Kevin's home office. The door was open a crack, and I heard voices. Megan's voice. She's not going to last forever. We just have to be patient. Kevin's voice. I know, but the estate stuff is taking longer than we thought. Dad didn't make this easy. That's why we need to get the power of attorney locked in. Once she's declared, then we can move faster. Declared what, Megan? You know what I mean. She's getting older. She forgets things. If we can get a doctor to say she needs help. I didn't hear the rest. I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. They were planning to have me declared incompetent. My own son and his wife were going to claim I couldn't take care of myself, just so they could get their hands on Harold's money. I went downstairs, ate pie, made small talk, smiled at my grandchildren, and the whole time I was thinking, these people are trying to destroy me. After Thanksgiving, I knew I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I called Susan, my daughter, the responsible one. She flew in from Ohio that weekend, said she'd traded shifts with another nurse, that she had to see me in person, that this was too big to handle over the phone. But first, I had to go to that bank, the Chase Bank on Fuller Avenue, where Harold and I had opened our first checking account in 1981. I walked in there on a Tuesday morning, June 4th. I remember the date because it was what would have been Harold's birth. The branch manager was a woman named Patricia. Another Patricia. This was becoming a theme. She was about my age, which I appreciated. She didn't treat me like a confused old lady. She treated me like a customer. I'd like to access my husband's safety deposit box, I said. He passed away recently. She asked for the death certificate, which I had. She asked for proof I was the spouse, which I had. She asked for the key, which I produced from my purse. Mrs. Patterson, she said, looking at her computer screen, I see this box was opened in 1992. Your husband paid cash for the annual rental, every year, in person. The last payment was made in January of this year. He never told me about it. Patricia's face was kind. That's not unusual, ma'am. A lot of people keep things private. Family heirlooms, valuable documents, things like that. She led me down to the vault. It was cold down there, and quiet. Smelled like metal and old paper. She used her key and my key together, and pulled out a long metal box. Take as much time as you need, she said, and left me alone. I stood there for a long moment, just looking at that box. It was bigger than I expected, heavy when I lifted the lid. Inside, there were papers, a lot of papers. I started going through them, one by one, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The first thing I found was a birth certificate. Harold Allen Patterson. His birth certificate. Nothing unusual there. The second thing was another birth certificate for someone named Robert Allen Whitmore. Same birth date as Harold. same hospital, same parents' names. I stared at that for a long time. Robert Allen Whitmore. Who was Robert Allen Whitmore? Underneath the birth certificates, there were bank statements, but not from Chase. Not from any bank I recognized. These were from a bank called Great Plains Trust, headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the amounts on those statements, I had to sit down. There was a chair in the little room. Thank God, because my legs gave out. The most recent statement, dated February 2024, showed a balance of $892,316, almost $900,000, in an account I'd never heard of, at a bank I'd never heard of, in a city my husband had never, to my knowledge, set foot in. I kept reading. Statements going back decades. The account growing over time. $50,000 in 1995. $200,000 in 2015. Regular deposits. Sometimes large, sometimes small, but always growing. There were also documents related to something called Prairie Wind Holdings LLC. Based on these papers, Harold was the sole owner, and Prairie Wind Holdings owned property, a lot of property, rental homes in Tulsa, a strip mall in Oklahoma City, an apartment building in Wichita. My husband, who complained about the electric bill, who gave me $50 gift cards for Christmas, was a real estate investor, with nearly $1 million in cash, and God knows how much more in property. I sat in that vault room for an hour, trying to process, trying to understand. My whole body felt numb, like when your foot falls asleep, but everywhere. It was Michael who found it, my quiet son. He'd flown in to go with me to Tulsa, to that storage unit, the one with the 15 filing cabinets and the safe the size of my refrigerator. In the third filing cabinet, in a folder labeled personal, a letter, addressed to me, dated January 2024, 3 months before Harold died. Mom, Michael said, holding the paper like it was something fragile. You should read this. I sat down at Harold's secret desk, in his secret office, and read my husband's last words to me. Dear Linda, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. I know that's a terrible way to start a letter, but I've never been good with words, and I've been putting this off for too long, so I'm just gonna say it. I've been lying to you for 43 years. Not about loving you, that was always true, but about the money, about the business, about who I really am. My real name is Robert Allen Whitmore. I changed it when I was 23 years old, after I got into some trouble that I'm not proud of. Nothing violent. I made some bad investments with some bad people. Lost money that wasn't mine to lose. I had to disappear for a while. Start over. Harold Patterson was a name I made up. A new life. I told myself it would be temporary, just until I paid back what I owed. But then I met you, Linda, and I couldn't tell you the truth. I couldn't risk losing you. The money in Oklahoma, that's my way of making it right, of building something real, something honest. I started with $5,000 I'd saved from the factory, bought a little rental house, then another, then more. I was going to tell you. I was going to tell you everything. But the longer I waited, the harder it got. Every time I went to Oklahoma, I told myself, this is the last trip. After this I'll come clean. But I was a coward. I was afraid you'd hate me, afraid you'd leave, afraid the kids would never forgive me. Everything in Oklahoma is yours, the accounts, the properties, everything. I'm sorry, Linda. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for the secrets. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth when I was alive. I loved you from the moment I saw you in that hardware store. That was the one true thing about me. The only thing that mattered. Forgive me if you can't. But even if you can't, please take the money. You deserve it. You always deserved better than me. All my love, forever, Harold. And then, in smaller handwriting at the bottom, Robert. I don't know how long I sat there, holding that letter. Time didn't seem to be working properly anymore. Michael sat down next to me, didn't say anything, just put his arm around my shoulders, and let me cry. My husband had been someone else. Someone named Robert Whitmore, who'd gotten into trouble, who'd had to start over, who'd built an entire life on a foundation of lies. But he'd also loved me. That part at least had been real. It wasn't enough. It was something, but it wasn't enough. There was another letter in that safe, addressed to Kevin. I know I probably shouldn't have read it, but after everything, I had to know, and I'm glad I did, because Harold knew. He knew about Kevin and Megan's plans. The letter said, "I've watched you these past few years, son. Watched you spend money you don't have, buy things you can't afford, dig yourself into a hole you can't climb out of. I know about the debts. I know about the second mortgage on your house. I know about the money you've borrowed from your mother's purse when you thought no one was looking. I also know that Megan has been researching estate law, that she's been talking to that accountant friend of hers about asset protection strategies, that she's been waiting for me to die so she can get her hands on whatever I leave behind. Here's the thing, Kevin. I'm not leaving you anything." Harold knew. He'd taken steps to protect me, but he'd never told me, because he didn't want to ruin my relationship with my son. Kevin had already ruined that himself. When I got back to Michigan, I called a family meeting. Kevin and Megan arrived at 6:15. Because Megan is never on time for anything. Kevin was wearing his salesman's smile, the one he uses when he's trying to close a deal. Megan was dressed nicely, carrying a bottle of wine, acting like this was a normal family gathering. Susan was already there. Michael was already there. And my lawyer Rebecca was already there too, though I hadn't mentioned that to Kevin. The look on Megan's face when she saw Rebecca was almost worth everything I'd been through. "Linda, what's going on?" Kevin asked. "Why is there a lawyer here?" I sat down in Harold's chair, my chair now, and I looked at my oldest son. "Kevin, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'd like you to be honest with me, though I'm not sure you remember how." "Mom, how much debt are you in?" His face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. The second mortgage on your house, the credit cards, the loan you took out against your retirement. How much?" That's private, $240,000, Megan said suddenly. We all looked at her. "We're $240,000 in debt," she repeated. Her face had gone hard, calculating. "Kevin made some bad investments. The real estate market crashed a few years ago. We've been barely staying afloat." "Megan, shut up," Kevin hissed. "No. I think we're past that now." I pulled out the letter Harold had written to Kevin, placed it on the coffee table, because Harold knew. He knew about all of it. The debt, your plans, everything. Kevin's face crumpled as he read. I watched him, my firstborn son, and I tried to find the little boy I'd raised, the one who'd wanted to make me proud. He wasn't there anymore. Maybe he hadn't been there for a long time. This doesn't mean anything," Kevin stammered. "Dad was paranoid. He was making things up." "Was he making up the $100 you stole from me?" The room went very quiet. "I have records," I continued. "Bank statements, transfer authorizations, your wife's digital signature on withdrawal forms, and I have witnesses who will testify that you've been systematically stealing from me since Harold died." Megan stood up. "We're leaving." "You can leave," Rebecca said, "but you should know that I've already filed a civil complaint. The police have also been notified. If you leave Michigan, it will look very bad." Megan froze. Kevin's mouth was opening and closing like a fish. "Mom," he said finally. "Mom, please. I'm your son. I made some mistakes, but you were going to put me in a nursing home. You were going to sell my house. You were going to take everything Harold left me and leave me with nothing. After 43 years of marriage, after giving you everything we had, that's what you were planning to do. We were just..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. "I want you to leave now. I don't want to see you or Megan until this is resolved legally. You're not welcome here." Kevin started crying, actually crying, tears running down his face. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him it was okay, that we'd figure this out, that I still loved him no matter what. But another part of me, a bigger part, was just tired. So tired of being lied to, of being taken advantage of loving people who only saw me as a source of money. "Go," I said. They went. It's been 2 years since Harold died, 2 years since I found out the truth about my husband and my son. Here's where everyone is now. Kevin and Megan divorced. 6 months after the court case ended, Megan moved to Arizona, I think. Kevin stayed in Michigan, renting an apartment in Lansing. He works at a car dealership now, sells Kias. He's called me a few times. Awkward conversations where he apologizes and cries and tells me he's changed. I listen. I don't hang up, but I don't invite him over either. Maybe someday. Maybe not. Susan has been my rock through all of this. She flies in from Ohio every month or so, helps me manage the Oklahoma properties, makes sure I'm taking care of myself. Michael handles the property management remotely. Turns out he's got a head for numbers, something he inherited from his father. Whichever version of his father that was. I'm still in the house. The house I almost lost. The house where Harold and I raised our family, where we had Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings, and all those ordinary moments that make up a life. I've made some changes. New furniture in the living room. Harold's chair is gone. I couldn't stand looking at it anymore. I go to Tulsa once a year now. In the spring when it's not too hot. Walk through the properties Harold built. Meet with the management company. Stand in that storage unit. I couldn't bring myself to close it and read his letters again. I don't know if I've forgiven him. I don't know if I even believe in forgiveness as a concept, but I've made peace with what happened, with who he was, with the life we had together. We loved each other. That part was real. The rest was complicated. People ask me sometimes what I would do differently if I could go back. Knowing what I know now, would I still marry Harold Patterson? Still spend 43 years with a man who was hiding so much? I don't know. I loved the life I had. The kids, the grandkids, the house, the ordinary days that seemed so boring at the time, but now seem precious. I loved the man I thought I knew. Would I trade all of that for honesty? For a husband who told me the truth from the beginning? Maybe, maybe not. It's an impossible question. What I do know is this: trust your gut. When something feels wrong, it probably is. When people start asking too many questions about your money, pay attention. When your family starts talking about what's best for you, make sure you're part of the conversation, and keep your own files. Don't let anyone, not your husband, not your children, not anyone, be the only one who knows where the money is. I learned that too late, but maybe someone watching this won't have to. Harold left me almost $4 million. He also left me a lifetime of lies. I'm using the money. I'm living comfortably. I'm taking care of myself and my grandchildren, and the causes I believe in, but I'd trade all of it, every penny, for one honest conversation with my husband. Just one. That's the real cost of secrets. Not the money you hide, or the lies you tell. It's the conversations you never get to have, the truth you never get to hear. Harold died with his secrets. I have to live with them. And honestly, some days I'm okay with it. Some days I'm actually okay. I'm 69 years old. I'm tougher than I thought. And I'm still standing. That has to count for something.